Disclaimer: The Boondocks is a show that tackles race, religion, politics, and general happenings in our modern society. I know lots of people watch and consume content to get away from a lot of that stuff and use content as a form of escapism, which is fine. But I just wanted to be transparent and let you know that this episode can't be broken down without hitting these topics. So if you're not in the mood for those topics, maybe come back later when you are in the mood, or maybe this video just isn't for you, which is cool. I harbor no ill will either way. So, The Boondocks is at its best when it's creatively and cleverly using its social commentary as the backbone for its entertainment and humor. It's for this reason why it's lived on in the minds of many for as long as it has. I mean, when Boondocks first aired, it was 2005, and here we are in 2022, and people are crushed to hear that HBO has decided not to bring it back. So when we're talking about a show that ran for 4 full seasons, well, really 3, we don't talk about that 4th season, it's hard to pinpoint one episode as the best. But if I had to pick one and only one, that crown for sure goes to The Passion of Ruckus. This episode generates so many talking points in our culture that are still heated talking points, if not more so, a decade later. And of course, the Boondocks goes about tackling these issues in a real goofy and ironic way, but really keeps that grounded and kind of gritty tone that towards the end of the Boondocks' run it starts to lose. The episode opens with Uncle Ruckus having a vision about heaven with none other than the greatest president in these United States, Ronald Reagan. Reagan gives Ruckus a tour of heaven and explains to Ruckus that there are different versions of heaven, but by far the best version of heaven is white heaven. And the only way to get into white heaven is to denounce his blackness and convince the rest of the world to follow suit. By the way, this is going to be a perfect time to say, if you haven't actually seen this episode before, please go watch it. You can watch it before this video, you can watch it after this video. You just really need to watch it, because some of the bits it has I can't really do justice, and I'm not really going to try to do them justice, to be honest, because I'm more so analyzing the serious side and the beauty and the writing of this episode. So yeah, definitely go watch it. We then transition to the other plot of this episode, which is Huey trying to figure out a way to free his innocent friend who is on death row. We see him explaining the situation and coming up with ideas to a uninterested Jasmine. With the age of social media, this is something you could find happening daily in our first real glimpse at the social commentary in this episode. It's super common to find a person or a group of people having a cause that they're passionate about, but they seem to have a hard time getting anyone else to care as much as they do about whatever their said passion and or cause is. Huey even ends up resorting to the same tactics we see in real life, which is, when all else fails, make people feel bad and question their morality for not caring about the same things that you care about. Which is ironic within itself, because it's an underhanded tactic of emotional manipulation, and if you were this objectively good person like you're trying to convince the world you are, would you really do that for your cause? Or in simpler terms, do the ends justify the means? Are you actually helping your cause by guilt tripping some random person on Twitter into putting BLM in their bio, or having someone retweet something about the ongoing war? Or are you just the person playing possum and pretending you care about something and trying to get others to do that same pretending? After this, Uncle Ruckus knocks on the Freeman door to tell Granddad he has a tumor and is dying in 6 months. It had been a while since I had seen this episode, and this is something that I had completely forgotten about. But in seeing it and remembering, it honestly adds an entirely new layer to the story. Obviously, Uncle Ruckus has never been fond of black people, but it questions his motivations for his religious pursuit, and this is something that's really common within many religions. Becoming religious when someone hits rock bottom in life. Sometimes people seem to only become religious when they're at their lowest point in life. And for some, when this happens, it brings into question whether you really have a newfound belief, or if you were just so desperate in a situation that you were willing to try anything to better your life. Taking into consideration the latter point, this often rubs lots of people in the world the wrong way, those religious and non-religious. But it's a complicated back and forth topic because you don't really have a right to question someone's beliefs and where those beliefs seem to stem from. Uncle Ruckus then holds a makeshift sermon in the middle of the neighborhood, and this is where I really want to applaud Aaron McGruder and the writing team as a whole for this episode. As Uncle Ruckus is blabbering about white heaven and Jesus, there's this crowd of people listening to him speak. He's going on this tangent about black people and Hispanic people when one of the white people in the crowd finally decides to ask,
"We're okay?
Excuse me?
White people, we're okay, right?"
Of course.
Cool.
This goes a long way as a moment to not only show how dense some people are in terms of not taking in and listening to what's being said to them, but it also explores the issue with Huey and Jasmine. It's a prime example of some people simply finding no reason to care about anything beyond themselves and the things that affect them. This newfound religious message has very little to do with these groups of people, so they almost instantly become disinterested in it. It's almost a direct parallel to Jasmine having no real direct connection to Huey's friend on death row, Shabazz, like Huey does, and it puts her in a position where she wants to care for Huey's sake, but simply can't bring herself to. After we see Huey having a conversation with Shabazz in prison, we see Ruckus spreading his oh-so-great word to the street public. There's a man there who notices Ruckus and decides to help him expand his word, despite himself being black and seemingly well aware that Ruckus is off his rockers. He still decides to help Ruckus though, because clearly Ruckus can garner an audience and all he cares about is profit and what he can get from Ruckus, which quickly glosses over how some religious figures' morals can really be put into question when it comes to benefiting themselves or progressing their own religion and actually trying to improve the world around them. The more powerful moment in this scene though is a conversation being held by Riley, Huey, and Jasmine. Huey doesn't say much. Jasmine tries to push the idea of faith and prayer on Huey, telling him it may help with the entire Shabazz situation, and Riley goes on a rant about how if God ever tried to tell him what to do, he'd smack the shit out of him. God, I love the Boondocks. In this moment, Huey is representing the average middleman when it comes to religion, especially in the modern day. He doesn't seem that interested in religion or faith, but he most certainly isn't going to speak out of turn and potentially rub Jasmine the wrong way. Jasmine and Riley both represent the extremes of both sides. Jasmine being the person who pushes religion on everyone and seems to think that if she can get the entire world on the same page with believing in one higher being, then all the world's problems will cease to exist. Whereas Riley represents someone who's completely disgruntled and disgusted at the idea of there being some higher being who is constantly looking over him, judging his every action. Also, I really like the subtle physical traits that Aaron McGruder gives Jasmine and Riley in this scene. When Jasmine tells Huey that she believes in God, she does this kind of smirky head raise thing that kind of gives off the energy that she's better than anyone who doesn't believe in God, which is something that some people who are deep in religion certainly feel, and you can clearly see Riley punching the air in his response to talking about how he smacked the hell out of God, which we definitely know is something that you can often find within people responding negatively and angrily and violently to things they don't quite understand or like. We fast track a little bit to Huey explaining this super crazy and elaborate plan to break Shabazz out of prison that in theory could work. The episode even goes out of its way to animate all of this crazy stuff that Huey's doing, like taking out guards and pretending to have a heart attack. But in reality, we all know that that plan won't work, like, at all. And after this, we see how Shabazz wrongfully ended up in prison in the first place. He was being accused of a murder he obviously did not do, and it's clearly played up to a super ridiculous level to take a jab at the justice system and the prison system, of course. I mean, this is like the most not so subtle social commentary in this entire episode, so I won't really get bogged down in too many details, because if you do watch this episode, this is the one thing you'll be able to obviously notice for yourself. In short, the law gets it wrong sometimes, especially when it comes to people of color, specifically in this case, black people. Getting past this point in the story, the episode pretty much retreads on all the symbolism and ideas it's done prior in the episode, so if you didn't catch them the first time, maybe you'll catch them this time around. I won't spend too much time going into details about those things. Instead, we're just going to jump forward to the closing moments of the episode. So we're now at a point of Ruckus being able to hold his own big organized sermon. He's holding it outside and it's completely filled up, so there has to be at least a few hundred people from the town here. And in our B plot, Huey has found himself completely at rock bottom with no options of saving his friend. We do a lot of jumping back and forth between Huey being in his own head, having his own inner dialogue, and Ruckus slowly but surely escalating the service to insane levels, until finally a giant fight breaks out with the only rational person being Robert. I could be reaching here, but I've always taken this moment to be symbolic of how trying to do and bring good can easily go left and cause chaos, and sometimes be even more chaotic than someone with true ill intentions has. Because how do you tell a man he's causing harm when he's already convinced himself he's doing good? So while a full-blown crisis is taking place with Ruckus, we snap back to Huey having one of, if not the most powerful dialogues in the entire series, and that's not something that can be taken lightly, because, well, if you don't believe me, look up some of the many quotables from Huey. Huey is a character that's pretty much known to be the voice of reason and logic in the series, whether it's breaking down some super goofy, silly moment that's simply poking fun at it and making light of one of the more dumb things in our world, or whether he's going on a serious tangent about the corruption that takes place in America. So to see him shaken to his core, literally questioning the world around him in this moment, stands out even more so than any other character doing this. Then finally, he gives in and he takes the advice of Jasmine. He prays, then either from the grace of a higher power or through just dumb luck, at the moment of Shabazz's execution taking place, the power to the city goes out due to a heavy thunderstorm that's happening, and a shot in the dark plan that Huey had in the very beginning of the episode pulls through and saves him from this execution altogether. The same storm causes Ruckus to be struck by lightning, which saves him from his cancer, and in turn makes him drop his entire white heaven movement, and that's that. So what's the message? Well, to be honest, I can't tell you for sure because I'm not Aaron Magruder, but here's the common man idea I gained from it. Something I didn't point out is that Shabazz is calm and at peace with his fate in this episode. I wouldn't say he's happy, but he seems not to want to dwell on what's happening any more than he has to, and if anything, he seems more upset at the burden all this is putting on Huey. It's subtle given all the symbolism that's here to unpack, but it feels as though Aaron Magruder wants to preach to the audience that we should put our best foot forward in life when it comes to any and everything that we can control, but whether we like it or not, things will arise that we can't control and that we won't have the answer no matter how much we seek it. So either through prayer and religion, tactics and planning, or any other form of coping we can think of, we should use them and try to realign ourselves with the joys of life. I think this idea is backed even more by the song that's playing while all this is happening. I can't play it, unfortunately, due to copyright, but if you're curious and want to hear the song for yourself, it's called Say I Believe in It by Isabella and Antenna. That has to say Antenna. There's no way you pronounce that any other way than Antenna, so we're gonna go with Antenna. The main focus that reinforces the message in this song comes in the chorus that reads, "Boy, don't cry over happiness. If you're crying too much, you're gonna lose that final touch. Boy, don't cry over happiness. Say I believe in it." The lyrics here are kind of simple. It's saying if you bask in your sadness and turmoil too much, then you'll miss the final touch. The final touch being healing and recovery from whatever it is you're going through at the moment. And this for sure is relatable to me, at least. I can think of a few times in life where I've been really sad or really angry about something, and that sadness and anger lasted so long that I didn't even remember what initially caused it, and I had to have this weird out about it experience where I snapped myself out of all of it and just take a step back. Ultimately, I think the passion of Reverend Ruckus wants to let us know life is hard, but constantly worrying and complaining about how hard it is won't make it any easier. Pinpointing issues and tackling them is fine, but sometimes we all need a moment to get over ourselves and figure out a way to squeeze life for every decent and enjoyable experience we can possibly get. And that's the end of the video. If you liked, you can subscribe and all that jazz, blah 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 blah. I make videos of this quality or better all the time.